All right, so the Constitutional Court's decision to release Chris Hani's killer on parole has been labelled as diabolical. The court has ordered that Janus Waluś be released within 10 calendar days from yesterday. Now, Waluś killed the SACP leader and anti-apartheid activist in April, that's Chris Hani, and that was in 1993, and was later released, or sentenced, I beg your pardon, to life in prison. So let's bring in now Julian Knight, who's the attorney for Janus Waluś, joining us via our telephone line this morning. Great to have you on the program, Julian. Thank you so much indeed for making time. Yeah, I'm sure you must have seen the reaction so far. There's been an outpouring of fury in certain sectors of society. In fact, some members of the governing party say they feel betrayed by this judgment. You obviously hold a different sentiment to this, given your own efforts. But what's your response to that?
Well, my response is equality before the law. We do not have a situation where the law and the Bill of Rights only belongs and applies to people who are members of the Communist Party or the ANC. It belongs to every single citizen in this country, every person that is in the country, whether you're a citizen or not. The Bill of Rights extends to those people. And based on that, and based on the fact that he qualifies for placement on parole in terms of the guidelines of this government, you should not have a situation where you differentiate and say, no, but in this case, the rules don't apply to him. That, in my opinion, is diabolical.
Yeah. You know, part of the sentiment that's being expressed is that Janus essentially went through some kind of box-ticking exercise here by fulfilling, at least insofar as process is concerned, the conditions for parole. But, for instance, the criticism is that there's been no signs of remorse on his part, given what happened so many years ago and where it could have potentially driven this country.
No, that is a complete misconstruence of what in fact has happened. There has not been a tick box exercise with regard to Walus. If you look at all of the interventions that have taken place with the various decisions, there have been extensive victim offender dialogues. There have been parole hearings where he was given the opportunity to apologize to Mrs. Hani, and when he eventually had the opportunity of meeting her face to face, she was the person who rejected the apology on the basis that, in her opinion, it was a self-serving apology aimed at getting parole. But, you know, at the end of the day, he has actually done a lot in his own development, and he has been described by the department as the epitome of rehabilitation. So, you know, it hasn't just been a tick box exercise that he's done sufficient time and now he must be released.
I don't mean to be alarmist or populist or anything like that, but I should ask this question. You know, at the time of his committing this crime back in 1993, many people watching, of course, say he brought the country to the brink of complete destabilization as we were trying to birth this democracy we now enjoy. A few years later, now that he's said to be released on parole, there's a sense that there are people who are equally as aggrieved as they were so many years ago. So how worried are you that this decision by the court may lead to remnants of that kind of destabilization in this country?
Well, I think that people must be law-abiding. We can't have a situation of mob rule where people feel that because they disagree with what a court has said, that they can just take to the streets and burn the court down. We have to have the rule of law, and we have to accept when courts make decisions that those decisions must be accepted and implemented. And if you challenge the decision, you do it in a legal way, and you go through a formal appeal procedure.
Yeah. As an attorney, I'm sure you've also grappled with this concept of justice in your own line of work. Would you agree that there is room for Chris Hani's family to feel that justice hasn't been meted out insofar as this matter is concerned, that at least from their perspective?
I would say that in instances, let's forget the Hani family, in instances of all victims of crime, they feel that way. But you must also remember that the granting of parole is not dependent upon the consent of the victims. And I think this is one of the faults that government has fallen into in the last couple of years, is when they have basically overemphasized the family's reaction as opposed to the rehabilitation that the person has undergone. If you take, for example, the situation of Ferdy Barnard, who was responsible for the murder of David Webster, there were objection after objection from the minister at the time, but the moment that Maggie Friedman indicated that she no longer had any objection to Ferdy Barnard being placed on parole, the minister then just turned around and said, well, in that case, I'm placing him on parole. Now, if you have that sort of arbitrary application of the law, it means that then you are taking into consideration things that you ought not to. And I'm not saying that the family's view is not an important factor to be taken into account, but it is one of several factors. But again, we get back to the law. The law does not say that the granting of parole is subject to the permission of the victims. If that were the case, nobody would ever get parole.
Sure. Last quick one from me, Julian, if I can. There, in the past, had been efforts, I think, from the state to deport Mr. Waluś if he were able to be released. In fact, I think what happened is that government had tried to deport him so that he doesn't get the prospects of getting parole. Now that this parole is going to be granted...
What happened was that the Department of Home Affairs revoked his citizenship in a deliberate attempt to make it impossible for him to get parole.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
What happened then was that when we brought the application to court, this is now the court against which the Constitutional Court reversed the decision. The Department of Home Affairs basically said that in the event that parole would be granted, they would make the necessary arrangements for the extension of his temporary residence for the purpose of serving his parole. But I think that government might wish to revisit that. I think it would probably be far simpler to deport him.
Sure. All right. That's where we're going to have to fold it for now due to time. Thanks very much for speaking to us. I appreciate your weighing in on this. Julian Knight is Janus Walus's lawyer, giving us reaction, of course, to that important ruling from the Constitutional Court yesterday.